Former Congressman David Rivera has often been a center of attention in South Florida politics, both elections and controversies.
He is running again for the state legislature, and so when we sat down earlier this week, my first question was, why?
Everything that's going on with the economy, I don't think this is the time for newcomers. I think this is the time for people that have some experience to perhaps get back into public service, people that can have an impact immediately for our community. I've done that before for many years. I've had quite an impact on many public institutions for our community, and I think I can do it again.
It's not a step back. Is this a comeback for you? How would you characterize it?
Not at all. I've been active in many projects involving our community during my time in the last few years in the private sector, but it's not really a comeback because public service is a vocation. It's a lifetime vocation, really. It's not something that you're born into, but it kind of is born into you. And so I've always been someone who wants to give back to the community, and here's an opportunity to do so again. You
have stirred up so much controversy over the years. I mean, you put a faux candidate into a congressional race, Justin Lamar Sternad, and now you've been fined $456,000. Are you going to pay that?
Well, first of all, you've been reading the fake news from the Miami Herald. I never put any fake candidate into any race. That's one of the reasons why no one has, from any regulatory or legal agency in the government has ever accused me of that. You mentioned some sort of fine. There's no fine right now either, Michael. The way that works is the judge makes a preliminary opinion regarding that fine, but gives us a chance to respond. So right now we are in that response period where we have given the judge more information regarding that fine, but there's no judgment against David Rivera.
Yeah, David, I was in federal district court when Judge Robert Scola said, who is unindicted co-conspirator number one? Give us his name. And the U.S. attorney said, it's David Rivera.
And then they never said anything else. Can you imagine that? So the U.S. attorney who at that time wanted, the assistant U.S. attorney who at that time wanted to be a U.S. attorney and was using me as a political ploy to advance his career, is one of the most corrupt officials in the U.S. attorney's office. Never said David Rivera again, just that one day. And well, I think he said it because...
He said it reluctantly.
And he said it reluctantly because it wasn't true. And he said it because the Miami Herald pushed him into saying that, because the Miami Herald has been publishing fake news on this matter and on so many other matters more recently regarding Venezuela and others. But right. So he was just following the fake news agenda of the Miami Herald.
Did you have anything to do with Justin Lamar Sternad?
Zero.
Running for Congress?
Zero.
And any money? I mean, you were
Zero.
accused of...
Zero. Again, you've been reading the fake news from the Miami Herald. This has been a campaign. This has been a campaign of fake news that has been gone back a decade. Remember, this is 2012. We're in 2022, Michael. We've got inflation. We've got gas prices. We've got food prices. We've got a lot of problems facing this country and facing our community. You're talking about some silly campaign ploy from somebody else back in 10 years ago, Michael. This is 2022. Yeah. It's time to think about what the problems facing our community are today. Who's best capable and experienced and has the record of bringing benefits to our community? Who has that? And it's David Rivera.
Well, let's talk about 2017.
Okay.
When you allegedly had a contract with either the government of Venezuela and Nicolas Maduro, or with PDVSA, the Venezuelan state oil company, for $50 million to somehow improve their image. Did you?
No. Once again, not true. You've been reading the fake news in the Miami Herald. That's what the Miami Herald says. The fact of the matter is that there is a corporation, an American corporation in this country named Citgo Petroleum. Citgo Petroleum is based in Houston. It is incorporated in Delaware, has its headquarters in New York. Citgo Petroleum in 2017 approached me because members of the Venezuelan opposition had talked to me about dissidents inside Citgo that were not happy with the way the company was being run by Venezuela, by the government of Venezuela. And they came to me asking for suggestions, for consulting, for counseling on how they could distance themselves, how they could separate themselves from the disastrous, failed economic direction that they were heading.
For how much?
To help them. The contract with an affiliate of Citgo here in the United States was for $50 million, which represents to them, a company that is a multi-billion-dollar corporation and does these kind of, $1 million contracts routinely over the last several decades, had nothing to do with PDVSA, had nothing to do with the government of Venezuela. The Miami Herald lied when they said there was a contract between David Rivera and PDVSA. It doesn't exist,
so
Michael. Hold on a second. And I challenge the Miami Herald to bring it to you. Bring Michael Putney the contract that is signed between David Rivera or a company of David Rivera's and PDVSA. Michael, it doesn't exist.
These things have dogged you for years. So
Well,
what do you tell constituents? What do you tell the voters in District 119 who ask you about these
It's
things?
very simple. When I was in the state legislature, I sponsored an amendment that said no courts in the state of Florida should have to publish notifications in physical newspapers and pay newspapers legal notices, and shouldn't have to pay legal notices to newspapers because the internet was alive and well. Nobody was reading newspapers. Everybody could do that. You could do that on
so
the
you
internet
punished
for a lot. No, it wasn't.
newspapers
It
of the
wasn't
state.
punishment. You consider it punishment. I consider a benefit to the taxpayers, where they're not having to worry about courts spending taxpayer money advertising in physical newspapers that on the planet Earth hardly anybody except you actually reads, where you could do it on the internet.
Let me ask you about your old friend Marco Rubio. You've known each other since what, the 80s? You shared a house in Tallahassee when you both served in the legislature. Has he endorsed your candidacy?
I haven't even discussed it with him because,
Why not?
well, first of all, I filed on Friday. And to be honest with you, Michael, I've been active in this community even before I knew Marco Rubio. I was working at Radio Martilla with Jorge Mascanosa at the Cuban American National Foundation, and I was at the United Nations Human Rights Commission with Ambassador Valladares long before I knew Marco Rubio. And, if I present a candidacy to the voters, I'm going to do it based on my own history, based on my experience. And really, if I need endorsements from big names in order to win a state house seat, that doesn't, I think, bode well. I think the voters are going to judge me on my history with the community, my accomplishments in the community, and that's what I'm going to base my campaign on.
What is the main issue that David Rivera is running on? Because it really can't be all of your past history. Your past history, frankly, my friend, is sort of checkered.
Not when it comes to my performance in the legislature, absolutely not. Maybe when it comes to these extraneous issues that the Miami Herald has brought up, this fake news that you have mentioned in the interview. But I think the issue really now is this is not time for a learning curve. This is time for people to go in, have an immediate impact. Nobody needs to tell me where the bathrooms are in the legislature in Tallahassee.
You know your way around.
I know my way around. I know the folks in the building. And so I can go in there and I can keep having that impact like I had for FIU, for Miami-Dade College, for Jackson Memorial Hospital, for our infrastructure, for our jobs on day one.
David Rivera filed the paperwork to run for the state house, but the State Division of Elections still does not list him as a qualified candidate. We have asked why. We're waiting for an answer.